Episode 188, IRONMAN 70.3 Waco with Valerie Myers. Welcome to the pursuit of the perfect race. I'm Coach Terry Wilson, and with each episode, I bring stories of athletes to you that share their experiences at races in order for you to learn how to have your perfect race. We will hear stories from athletes of all ages, abilities, and races of all distances. So regardless of where you fit in, there's something in it for you. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Now let the pursuit begin. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Pursuit of the Perfect Race. Today I'm talking with Valerie Myers about her recent race at IRONMAN Waco 70.3 that took place on October 28th, 2018. The swim was canceled here, and she had a time of 6 hours, 39 minutes, and 43 seconds. She's being coached by former guest on the podcast, Melissa Richardson with Octane Athletics. Welcome to the show, Valerie. I look forward to diving in about your race and spending some time with you today.
Great. Hi. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. So what made you want to do this race in the first place?
Oh, well, I started triathlon about 10 years ago with a sprint on a whim and enjoyed it so much. I considered an Olympic distance, signed up for one, but I chickened out at the last minute. That's kind of been my redemption desire, is to eventually do an Olympic distance. So last year we were in Cozumel, and I saw these signs of caution, Ironman athletes in training, and I got really excited about that. I was like, you know what? 2018 is going to be the year that I do my Olympic distance. I'm going to do it. So I decided on that, but I kind of kept thinking about the Ironman. So I started doing a little research, hadn't really looked into it too much, and found out that they both the half distance and the full distance. I was like, oh, half distance, maybe that might be something that's achievable. And I got a little crazy and started to search on the site for races, and I found Waco. And I was like, oh, that's really close. That would be a good one to do. So I started to fill out the registration, and then I chickened out again. So I closed out the window. I'm like, okay, I have to forget. And then Ironman sent me an email. Oh, it looks like you didn't finish your registration for Waco. Maybe you want to do that. And I deleted that email. The next day they sent another one. And I thought, okay, you know what? I need to do this. So I just went ahead. It was April Fool's Day, and I pulled the trigger and signed up for it, completely forgetting that the goal was really just to do an Olympic distance. So I decided if I wanted to do it, I was going to do it right. I'd done sprints before and never really trained for them, just kind of did a little bit of biking and running and the occasional swim in the pool like 2 days before the race just to make sure. And decided if I was going to do a half, I really needed to get a coach and do it right to make sure that I stayed injury free, that I stayed healthy, and could finish. That was my goal, was just to finish. So that's how I got to Waco.
Wow. So going into Waco, you picked a coach, Melissa Richardson with Octane. How was your coach selection process, and what made you end up picking her versus all the other coaches you could find online? How did you come to find her?
Yeah. So I looked at other people who I found the Facebook, the Ironman Waco Facebook page, and found some people that had registered there. There was a sprint that I had done, the St. Patrick's Day Tri in March here in Keller. And there were some people that had posted where they were going. And I may have done a little Facebook creeping on some people's pages and just to see who they were connected to, if they'd done any coaching before. And a couple people had found Octane, and they were partnered with Octane. So I started researching Octane, and I liked what people had to say about their coaches, and I liked how they set up their training. It seemed approachable. I've worked with some trainers in the past, and I wanted somebody who was going to fit my introverted personality, who was going to be able to help me do what I needed to do without getting too much in my face and too A-type pushy. And I decided to just reach out to find out more. And Melissa was the one that gave me a call back, and I enjoyed our conversation, and what she described as far as the support that she could give sounded like it was right for her.
Wow. So after you get a coach with Melissa and all this, your training really begins when for Waco?
So I registered on April 1st, and I signed up with Melissa. Our first workout that she assigned for me was on the 15th. So it was pretty right away. I wanted to get started right away. So I've been training with her almost since day one for Waco training.
Wow. So what was your initial training like going into this?
It was structured, which is very, very different than my fly by the seat of the pants approach. So we use training peaks. And so she would assign different workouts for different days of the week. So I really like having that structure, which is surprising to me because I'm pretty go with the flow, but I like knowing what I needed to do. And I travel quite a bit. I travel at least 2 weeks out of the month. So being able to plan for what workouts are coming was really important to fit that into my work schedule, my travel schedule. So it started out pretty easy, like get in the pool and start swimming laps. And my swim training is very limited. Before my very first sprint, I took 5 lessons just to learn how to do more than doggy paddle. And I've just kind of figured it out on my own. So we actually met a couple times and she tweaked my swim style, which was abysmal, and taught me the right way to swim. So my swim time actually went backwards a little bit until I figured it out. And then I got back to where I was, and now I'm better than where I was before. So very, very slow approach at the beginning, which was great for me to kind of work myself up to having that structure and building up my endurance and being able to refine my technique.
Wow.
Which is still a work in progress.
So going into this race, did you have a certain goal that you wanted to achieve, or was it just finish? Did you want to go in here and place in your age group, or was it just what was this like for you?
I wanted to finish.
Okay.
That was my goal. And initially my goal was, I think a lot of people think this is, doing triathlon is going to help me lose weight, because I am a little on the fuller figured side. And I thought, okay, half Ironman, I'm just going to be knocking off pounds with all the workouts I'm going to be doing. Little did I realize that this is an endurance sport, and you have to eat, and you eat a lot. Even though you're working out a lot, you're still eating a lot. So there was my goal of being able to lose the weight that I wanted to. I've put that on the back burner just because I wanted to make sure that I finish. And I've gotten to where I've been able to reduce my body fat and gain muscle, which is good, but still kind of at that same level.
Okay.
I'll get there eventually. I'm just having too much fun now.
Right. So as far as your training going into this race, what was the longest swim, bike, and run workouts that you did?
Let's see. So as far as the combination, or what specifically did I do?
Specific long bike, run, and swim workouts.
The long ones. So, we built up to the long ones. In fact, the longest run that I had done was about 9 miles, and that was about 3 weeks before Waco. So, the approach we took was focus on the discipline that was going to get me the furthest, which was the bike. My swim, we'll get that to be passable. And then secondary was really working on the running. So, my runs, we really just worked on, we used heart rate zone training. We focused on getting to where I could go distances without, going outside of the prescribed heart rate zones, and adding distance on and on and on. So I don't really think I did too many long runs prior to Waco. Bikes, I use Trainer Road. So she gave me some workouts in Trainer Road. Of course, at the very beginning, they started out shorter distances, but I got to where we were doing 3-hour rides, whether it was out at Grapevine, riding around Grapevine Lake, or on that inclement weather doing Trainer Road. But there was usually 2.5 to 3 hour, 15-minute rides were the longest ones.
Okay. So what was your longest swim going into this race?
The longest swim going into this race was about 3,200 yards in a pool. And that was about a month prior to Waco. About 3 weeks prior to Waco, I was in Boston for work and picked up some kind of a bug and just had a head cold for what seemed like forever. In fact, I still have a little bit of a cough. And it was just lots of postnasal drip and general funk. And we decided it was best for me to stay out of the pool. So after that swim, 3 weeks prior, I'd had like 1 or 2 shorter swims, maybe about 2,200 yards. And then I haven't been in the pool since.
Wow. So
it was just as well the swim got canceled.
Yes. Good. So tell me more about this heart rate training. How did you know what heart rates to train at? And did y'all figure out your max, your lowest? Did you find out your exact zones? What was this like finding your zones and doing this heart rate training?
Yeah, so this is a new concept to me, one that Melissa recommended to help build up my endurance and make it such that I could run longer at a more manageable heart rate. So we did a threshold test. So she sent me to the track and I ran around the track and based on the distance that I went, I think I ran for 30 minutes as hard as I could. She took that max heart rate and set my heart rate zones for me. So my workouts primarily have been in zone 2, with zone 3 thrown in there as well. So, based on the week, whether it was a build week or peak or recovery, my workouts would be different. But primarily trying to get me to where I could go for longer distances in zone 2, a little bit in zone 3.
Okay. So are you using a 3-zone system, a 4-zone, 5-zone system? What does this look like?
This is a 5-zone system. So, it was mostly staying in low aerobic and high aerobic.
Okay. So how hard was it for you at the beginning to stay in that zone 2 range?
Hard. And I'm still working on it, but it's a little lower than it was. Especially, after, either doing a brick workout or during a race. When I run, my heart rate is certainly, higher than what I would like it to be in Waco. I actually stayed pretty close in zone 3 most of the time, which I was pretty excited about that. I did try Waco in July. I wanted to test out the course and just get a feel for it so I'd be more prepared going in. And that was awful. My heart rate, I was in threshold or sub-threshold and threshold for most of the run. It was pretty hot for sure, and I don't think that I had proper nutrition at the time, but it was ugly.
Wow. So a little bit more about your training. What was the most hours you trained in a week going into Waco?
On my peak weeks, I was probably doing, I looked at this, it was between like 11 and 13 hours a week. Most weeks were anywhere between 7 and 10. Okay.
So you're training anywhere between 8 and 13 hours on the average here. Did you have any days where you just mentally didn't want to train?
Ooh, the answer to that is yes, especially if it was a hard travel week. Sometimes my travel, I would leave at 5 o'clock in the morning for the airport, get on the plane. I spend all day with customers, might even have a customer presentation that night. And then it's like 9 o'clock at night and I still have, an hour on the treadmill. And some days you just say no. And then you put your shoes on and you get on the treadmill and you swear and curse and then start getting into the music and really enjoying it. And then you're glad you did it. I was glad I did it.
Right. So
it was definitely those days.
How did you get past that mental wall of doing the workout versus not doing it?
Well, what I found works for me, and this goes for even in the mornings when I'm home, and I just am not into it, just getting up and saying, just put your shoes on or, get your bike shoes on, just do a little bit, just get on and do it. And once I actually get on the bike or I get on the treadmill and I'm doing it, I get almost right into it. So it's just that little hurdle of take a little step, put the shoes on, or just sit up out of bed.
Right. Wow. So going into this race, what workouts did you do that gave you the confidence to go into Waco where you knew that you'd be able to do the 1.2 mile swim, the 56 mile bike ride, and a 13 mile run? How did you know that you could get there before race day?
Honestly, for me, using smaller races as benchmarks and confidence builders worked for me. So like I said, when I first started, I chickened out on Olympic distance. And when I signed up for the half Ironman, I did it knowing that I would need to do an Olympic distance before doing the half, just to know that I could at least do half of the half. So I've done 3 Olympics this year prior to prior to Waco. The first one was actually in Michigan. My sister, she lives in Michigan, and she'd seen me do triathlon for a long time, and she started thinking she'd want to do one. And I said, well, why don't I come up there and I'll do one with you? So we signed her up. There's a series called Tri Goddess up there, and we signed her up for the super sprint, which was on a Sunday, and they had an Olympic distance on Saturday. So I thought, okay, I'm going to use this Olympic as my first attempt. So me and my bike went up there, and I did the Olympic on Saturday, and then I did the super sprint with her on Sunday. And that actually was a really big confidence booster for me and made me feel like, okay, this is something I can tackle. A half is something that is actually something that I can finish.
It's doable.
Yeah, exactly. The hills in Michigan, for me, there were some significant hills. The swim was in a lake, and it was a 1,500 yard swim, and it wasn't hard at all. I did it with the wetsuit on, which I wasn't sure if we would do that in Waco or not, but I hadn't swum in my wetsuit for probably a good 7 years. And to be able to put it on, just jump in and swim around, and not drown, felt pretty good about that. So I felt good about the swim, the bike with the hills and everything. I felt good about the bike, and the run. I've always struggled with the run. And this run was mostly through trails, and there were ups and downs and rocks and sticks. And, it wasn't my best, but, I knew going into it that, it would be good training for Waco, because the hills in Cameron Park, when I read about, were pretty tough. So that was a huge confident builder for me.
Nice. So
yeah.
Going into this race, did you miss any training overall?
I did. So the swims, the 3 weeks leading up to Waco, I really didn't do any swimming. There were a couple bikes that I missed, because of travel, where, I had a flight delay a couple times. One time I got stuck in Oklahoma City for 6 hours and ended up just driving home instead of waiting for the plane. But a lot of times it was usually tied to travel, where I wasn't able to get where I needed to go.
Okay.
So there was, the swims, and then there were a couple bikes that I missed. And I think a run.
So when you're not training or racing, what are you doing?
Let's see. When I'm not traveling or racing, I am, trying to keep my house organized. We have 5 dogs, and 2 of them are seniors, and they're quite the handful. So trying to wrangle all the dogs and make sure the house is clean when I'm gone, and get back, and, visit with family when I can, keeps me sane and stable.
Nice. So how big of an issue is balancing life, working, and training, being that you're basically adding a part-time job of training in your life with your dogs and everything else?
I've had to learn to let go of some things. Sometimes we have dishes on the counter for maybe a couple days. Sometimes the laundry doesn't get done, or the laundry gets done, but it doesn't get folded. For me, that's been a challenge, just because I am a little OCD when it comes to cleanliness. But, sometimes the lawn doesn't get mowed. Sometimes they don't this doesn't happen. But, and sometimes we don't, sometimes I don't have as much of the, I'm sure everybody experiences this. You don't have the family time, because you've got to get up in the morning. Most Saturdays are, training mornings for long workouts. Sundays can be too, depending on which week you're in, if it's a long run week, or a long run day for Sunday. So you miss out on some family time, but, to me, it's been worth it. And I've got a really patient Sherpa husband who understands how important this is to me. And, he takes up a lot of the slack to help balance that out.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So going into this race, I know the weather, the last 2 weeks, whenever everybody's tapering and has a lot more time on their hands in the group, the weather was just like nonstop. What's the weather like today? What's the weather like today? And then it started raining, and then the river went up, and everybody was sharing what the river was doing. It seemed like hourly. How was this impacting your outlook on the race?
It really didn't have much impact at all. I don't ever get too worried about anything until right beforehand. And I think that's why I was really good at winging it in training back before I had structure. But for most things in life, I don't really get too concerned about it until like the day before or maybe the day of, depending on what it is. And you can't predict the weather. You watch the news on TV and they talk about the weather, and it's often not what they say it's going to be. So you can look 30 days out, you can look 2 weeks out, you can look 1 week out, and it doesn't mean the weather is going to be what it is. Right. It definitely was clear that the water was high and that there was the risk of the swim getting canceled. The thought of it stunk, but at the same time, I definitely wanted everybody to be safe, myself included. And it's not the last half Ironman I was going to do. So even if the swim got canceled, which it did, I see it as this is just benchmarking for my next one.
Right. So when did you actually start booking your travel arrangements, being that you live in the Dallas area, to go down to Waco?
Ooh, right away. For hotel, we did drive down on Saturday. We stayed overnight through Sunday. I did book 2 days because I knew that the day was going to be long on Sunday and wanted to be able to have a home base to be able to shower and relax beforehand and maybe even stay overnight if we decided to. My husband volunteered in the finisher shoot, and he had to stay through 5:30. So I knew it was going to be a long day, so we booked 2 days. But the day after I registered for Waco, I booked our hotel because hotels are notorious for jacking their prices up if there's an event. Right. So the quicker you can get on it, the better.
So what hotel did you stay at?
We stayed at the Marriott Residence Inn, which is about 5 blocks away from the venue on University.
Wow. How much was it a night?
We paid $259 a night.
Wow.
I don't know how that measures up, and I don't want to hear if others had cheaper rates, so I'll be sad. But I do know that some people had higher rates. So, I travel a lot, so I have, Marriott points. So we did use Marriott points for one night and, paid for the other night, which worked out okay.
So whenever you actually get down to Waco on Saturday, what was your impression of the city once you got down there the first time? I know you've been here before, but not for this event.
Yeah, sure. So, my impression was, it seemed like the city was pretty excited. So the Residence Inn where I stayed, they had a table set out with snacks. They had little water bottles and bananas and fruit and a little welcome triathletes, sign. They opened their, breakfast area at 4 a.m. early, which is not typical. They usually open at 6. So it was great that they were thoughtful enough to be willing to help athletes prepare for the morning, which was fantastic, and their families as well, since everybody was going to be up early. The restaurants, the places that we went to, the different places that we went to, they were very welcoming. The place was clean. The atmosphere and the environment was really energetic. I think it was great.
Wow. So what was your impression of Ironman Village here?
Ooh, so, in some of my earlier travels, about 2 weeks before I got to go to Louisville, and I think it was 2 weeks before. It was whenever, Ironman Louisville was. And I got there on Thursday and they had set up Ironman Village. And, I was like, I'm going to go check it out before I have to go to my customer meeting. So I drove over there real quick and wandered around, and I was a little let down because nobody was there. It was just vendors, and this was Thursday afternoon, of course. So I didn't know what to think about how Waco would be. I was hoping that it would be a little bit more exciting. So when we got to Ironman Village on, Saturday, well, let me back up because I was really excited about it. I actually drove down on Friday to do athlete check-in. So I drove an hour and a half to go do athlete check-in, and that's when I first saw Ironman Village.
And then you drove an hour and a half back home?
Yeah. So
you drove 3 hours for something that you could do the next day?
I was really excited. Cuckoo. No, I was, and I do, I wouldn't call it what I do for fun, but, what I do on the side, sometimes is I do, emergency animal rescue transport. down to Waco or Austin. So I drive to Waco or Austin a lot with animals that are sick or need help. And so driving to Waco, honestly, I don't even think twice about it. So that Friday, I thought if I can knock out athlete check-in, because I heard the lines get really, really long, and that will save my husband time standing around waiting. And plus I could just have that opportunity to check it out on my own and have that experience and take my time with it. So I did. And it was great. And I'm really glad that I did do that. I went down early just for athlete check-in. And that's when I really experienced the village, and there was a lot of energy. There was a lot of people there. Not just the, vendors, but also, athletes. There wasn't a ton, but there was a lot. And then Waco was also doing, get to know Waco convention they had set up behind the Hilton. So they had some tables set up. And it was just it was a fun experience. There was, a lot of things to do and see. I was able to take my time walking around the merchandise, store area and, get some swag before.
So how much did you buy?
Oh my gosh, not too much. I put some things back. I got a couple shirts and, I got a visor and a water bottle. I guess that's, pretty minimal. But then when we went down on Saturday with my husband, it was really crazy, and that was a lot of fun. We went to athlete the debrief, and heard about the swim that they were thinking about still having it. Changed it to point, and they'll let us know race morning if we were still going to have it for sure.
Right. So as you wrap your head around what's going to happen the following few days, what is the mindset of yours going into this race?
Yeah. So, again, I usually don't get too nervous or excited until, the day before or the day of. And I think I did. I didn't really get excited until that night when I was, at the hotel and I was laying out my nutrition for, each of the different legs. Excuse me. And,
so going into the actual day before the race, you get to check your bike in and all this fun stuff. What was this process like for you?
Oh, checking in, the bike. That was an interesting experience only because, I had done a ride the 2 days before on my trainer. I got my bike cleaned up, got it all ready. The one issue I did have with my bike was a braking issue. So my back brake, I was having a little trouble with it. It didn't seem like it was grabbing quite right. So I stopped at the bike shop. They had tents out in the parking lot and asked them to take a look at it. And they recommended replacing the brake pads. So he took it for a ride around the block just to make sure. He said, yeah, we need to replace the brake pads. So I left it for about 45 minutes while he fixed that and went to the athlete briefing and came back, and it was fixed with the new brake pads. And then I wheeled it off to bike check-in. I was a little nervous about not having ridden it after he replaced the brake pads, just because what if he did something wrong? But I did not test it out beforehand. So I just went ahead and checked it in. But I was amazed at how large transition was.
Really?
I knew there was going to be, upwards of 3,000 athletes, but I've never seen transition that big. It was kind of intimidating. And our racks were kind of pretty far away from where bike in was, where you go in with your bike. So we had to walk and walk and walk past all these racks, and there's just these amazing bikes. I have my bike. I do have a tri-bike. It's an Orbea, and I bought it used in May. Before that, I had my Specialized road bike, and I knew that after a few group rides around Lake Grapevine that I was not going to cut it on the road bike. So I ended up finding one used on Facebook Marketplace, and I've been so pleased with it. But there's just some incredible bikes, and it was really cool to see all the all the thousands and thousands of dollars there racked up. And just walking past all the racks, it was, a little intimidating just thinking about the next day being out on the road with thousands of bikes, and a little concerned about, how to manage through the traffic. What happens if, somebody bumps me? All these these are some of the thoughts that started coming into my head. So, kind of started to think about it, in a nervous way as opposed to a positive way. I would try to keep my thoughts positive, but I was like, ugh, what if something happens? But, it was really neat. So we racked our bike and, headed back out to the village, but it was a very overwhelming and exciting and a little intimidating experience there.
Wow. So after you check your bike in, are you wanting to get a certain meal in for dinner? What does this look like?
So we had a team dinner set up, at 4. So, wanted to get the majority of our nutrition in before 6. So, we went to a restaurant as a group, and I had, just like flatbread pizza and some little bit of a ahi poke salad, and tried to keep it fairly light and more on the higher carb side with some protein in there, and a glass of wine.
A glass of wine.
Heck yeah. Don't want to do anything different on race day. Just keep it the same.
Yes. So as you're getting ready for bed the night before, what was the weather outside?
It was nice. It wasn't, it was a little chilly. It was, if I recall correctly, I think it was a little partly cloudy. It wasn't clear, but it wasn't raining, which was awesome. But, it was a nice night.
Cool. So as you get ready to go to bed, what was your mindset going into the next day? Just finish, obviously, but do you want to make sure that you hit any certain goals along the way? Because we all set goals for ourselves. Regardless of even if it's just finished, there are sub goals out there as well.
Yes. So, definitely finish. I believe in visualization. So I spent a lot of time, that night as well as several nights before, just kind of visualizing each of the different, portions of the race. My goals as I was thinking about it, I really wanted to try and hit, 3 hours or, 3 hours, 5 minutes on the bike. And I really wanted to hit 3 hours and 15 minutes on the run. I think that was a little, wishful thinking given the hills, but, the bike, I pretty much hit where I wanted to hit for the bike. So I was just coming up on the lake, and I could see the bridge where we cross over and go back into transition. And it was like 2 hours and 58 minutes. I'm like, I really want to push it and dig in, but I knew that this was not the time to dig in. And I ended up, I think it was like 3 hours and 6 minutes.
Right. Or
something close in there. So I was very pleased with that. I averaged about a little over 18 miles an hour, which I didn't think I'd do that a couple months ago. So I was really happy with that.
Great. So you get up on race morning. How much sleep do you think you got?
I went to bed at about 10 o'clock, and I woke up a couple times that night, probably for easily 30, 45 minutes. And then we were up at, did I get up? 6 o'clock. So I probably got about maybe 6 hours of sleep.
Okay.
The interesting thing about this race, because the swim was canceled and we were doing the rolling bike start, I knew that I didn't have to be in transition at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. or anything early. So we planned on being there at 7. So it was more of kind of a relaxed feel for the morning, which was kind of nice, a little different, but it's good.
Okay. So before you leave the hotel, what is your ritual like before you leave to go down to transition?
As soon as I wake up, I have breakfast. I have my delicious oatmeal and a banana, and I'll either do some Greek yogurt or I'll do some Fairlife milk because it's got a good amount of protein in there, but it's not overwhelming. And then I just go through my transition bag and make sure that I've got everything that I need, even though I did it just hours ago. And then I just get up and go. And because this was the weekend before Halloween, I did wear a costume transition to keep me warm. Instead of wearing just a sweatshirt, I wore a little Pokemon costume, little onesie. It was fun.
Nice. So as you're actually getting to transition, you get there, you air up your tires until they feel right, and then you're getting ready to just hang out until they start the rolling start. What was your mindset going into this? Because it's a rolling start. You have to wait for a really long time just to even start your race. Did you have another nutrition plan to make sure, hey, being that it's going to wait this long, I need to eat a little bit more? What is this like for you?
Yeah. So knowing that we were later, I got to eat a little bit later, which was good. But I did bring something with me to transition while we were waiting. I took advantage of that wait to just relax and enjoy the moment. This was my first half. There's amazing athletes, and it was a lot of fun. So I enjoyed just kind of chilling out a little bit and taking my time and taking in the day and watching, rack by rack, everybody went. And as each rack went, we cheered for each rack as they went. And it was just a really good, positive morning.
Okay. So as you're about to start your race, 2-3 people in front of you go, how's your anxiety and excitement levels?
Well, and it was a long walk from bike out to the actual start line. So when they called our rack, I think that's kind of when my excitement kicked in, when I started getting the excited nerves. And took my bike out. We're all walking along, and as we're going into, we're in the little channel area to get to the start line, the mount line. And Melissa, my coach, was next to me, and she happened to say, make sure that you put your left pedal up so that when you throw your leg over, you're ready to go and you start. So I look down and I start to move my pedal up, and the chain falls off. So when you ask about anxiety level, it was good up until that moment when I'm about 50 feet from the mount line and my chain is off my bike, and I'd start just panicking a little bit. I'm like, my chain fell off. So I'm fidgeting, trying to get the chain over while still trying to move forward in the chute there. And, fortunately, one of my teammates, Jesse, was able to come over and help me out a little bit, help me get the chain back on, and flip through my gears, because I did not check my gears to make sure that I had it in the lowest gear. So the last few literally seconds before I mounted the bike were a little panicky and flustery, but it all worked out well. And with those nerves, I did have a little bit of trouble getting my my cleat on the pedal, but made it out. I didn't knock anybody over. I didn't fall over. So it was I consider that great success.
Wow. So after you
off we went.
Yeah, once you get on the bike, what does the first 10 miles look like? Paint the image for me. What does this atmosphere look like? What does this look like for you?
Well, it was really exciting. So of course, at the beginning of the bike, you're going past all of the team tents. You've got the crowd. Everybody's cheering. There's more cowbell. There's lots of noise, lots of excitement. At first, you kind of tune it out because you're just focused on getting on the bike and getting started. And then as you move along, you hear the sounds and you hear the cheering, and it's really motivating. And it was also not as crowded as I thought it would be. So with the start that we had, it was almost like a regular race start when everybody just kind of goes out of transition on their own. Some people are faster, some people are slower. So it wasn't as crowded, so I was definitely more relaxed about that. My speed, the road coming out of transition going into the course was nice and smooth. So I was able to pick up speed and maintain, good speed throughout most of it. The other area that I was concerned about was drafting. So with the 6 bike lengths, that seems like forever. It feels like a half a football field. So I was really nervous about making sure that I was able to maintain that 6 bike length distance without bunching up or having anybody continue to get in front of me where I had to keep going backwards and almost make no forward movement. But it really didn't happen that way. Not until we got a little further out and you start getting with people who are kind of biking at your same speed. And when we were on China Springs Road, there was an area where people were really bunched up. There wasn't a whole lot of width that people could go because it was an open road, and people were bunching up. And when the official came by, she was just handing out the cards to a lot of people because everybody was just really bunched up. And even if you were able to get behind someone and back up, there just wasn't enough room. And I don't know if that's typical. This was my first experience with 6 bike lengths. Usually I've experienced 3 bike lengths, which I still feel challenging. But this was tough, so I just made sure that I stayed far behind folks when I could.
Wow. So usually the marker is from cat eye to cat eye. I don't know if you've heard that before. So reflector to reflector on the road. So that's a good rule of thumb to kind of use, because it's more than likely the exact same thing that most officials are using is from reflector to reflector, because they can't sit here and hold a measuring stick while they're on the motorcycle, and they have to have some kind of measurement, and they're usually using that or 1.5 white lines.
Makes sense.
So that's how they're measuring things around. So as you're on the bike here, what is the road quality like? Is there any sharp turns that anybody needs to be aware of? How are the aid stations? This episode is sponsored by Wasatch Apparel. Wasatch Apparel was founded on the belief that everyone should have the ability to have custom quality apparel without the stress of dealing with large clothing companies. The vision of Wasatch Apparel is to provide the highest quality apparel for endurance and fitness enthusiasts. They specialize in custom triathlon and cycling gear. Whether you're an individual that wants to make an impression or a large team that needs kits for everyone, Wasatch Apparel has the highest quality and customer service to deliver exactly what you need. Thank you, Wasatch Apparel, for sponsoring this episode. So as you're on the bike here, what is the road quality like? Is there any sharp turns that anybody needs to be aware of? How are the aid stations?
Let's see. Sharp turns. There wasn't anything that I considered significantly sharp. I didn't experience any kind of sharp turns any different than I've had in any other sprint distance race that I've had or Olympic distance race. There was one patch that had gravel. So as far as, the turns, that there was like one little patch with gravel, but if you were going slow enough and they gave you plenty of heads up for it, you were fine if you were managing your speed appropriately for coming up on a turn. Aid stations, they were fantastic. I haven't experienced this long distance before, but if this is representative of all Ironmans or all long distances, it was great. They were well prepared. The volunteers were well trained. They knew exactly what they needed to do to help support the athletes. I forgot that they would have bananas on at the aid station. So the first aid station we hit, I passed it. I felt like I was fine at the time. I didn't need anything. And I happened to pass one of my teammates who was going a little slower than me at the time because she had stopped at the aid station, or not stopped, but slowed down for it. So I go past her and I look over and I'm like, "Hey, Annalie." And she's just all casual munching on a banana. I'm like, "Where'd she get that banana? Does she have like a backpack on or something? She's eating a banana." And I realized afterwards that she got it at the aid station. So, another feeling of apprehension for me was at the aid stations, knowing how to grab something, because I've never done this before. So that, the volunteers hold stuff out and you slowly go by and you point at somebody and say banana or Gatorade or what have you, and they hold it out and you hopefully grab it successfully and go on your way. Well, I'd never done that before, and I was really nervous about hitting a volunteer or, clipping another biker or missing it and falling off or, something. I did have some of those visuals in my head that I tried to block out, but I decided on the second aid station that banana just looked darn good and I was going to get one. So, sure enough, they came up to that aid station and slowed down, and my fears were a little unwarranted because there wasn't really anybody around me. I went nice and slow. I saw a volunteer, pointed at her, and I yelled banana, and she held it out, and I just grabbed it, and it was fine, and it was delicious.
Wow. So as far as the aid stations, did you have enough time to get everything?
I did. And the way that they had it was they staggered it too. So if you missed the first banana, there was somebody else a little bit further along who had second banana. Same thing with the Gatorade. So they did stagger it, which I think was really good. And I feel like they were spaced out far enough where, you could, if you knew what was coming, you could plan for it. So it was easy.
It was easy.
Easier than I thought.
Even for a first timer.
Even for a first timer like me.
Wow. So whenever you start getting towards the later portions of the bike ride, miles 30, 40, and 50, how are you feeling? Are you holding up pretty good? Do you have any cramps, GI issues? Do you have any bad spots mentally? What does this look like?
I was really surprised. So I've struggled with dialing in my nutrition up to this point. So I really felt like I prepared myself more than I had before with nutrition. So, and I felt like all I was doing was eating on the bike. It was like a food fest. So every 5 miles, I had a piece of honey stinger waffle that I had cut up in a little Ziploc bag in my bento box. And I'd hit 5 miles, my Garmin would go off and I'd eat something, or I'd, get a banana or something like that. So by the time I hit mile 40, it dawned on me that I wasn't tired, and I was really shocked, and I was trying to figure out why, because I was clipping along faster than I ever have. This is my fastest bike. And, I was shocked that by 40 miles in, I felt like I had gone 10. So I feel like at that point, my nutrition was pretty spot on. I wasn't having any GI issues. I wasn't feeling tired. My legs felt strong. Even given the road at the time, because there were some portions that were pretty nasty chip seal. And there was a lot of vibration.
What do you mean nasty chip seal?
Just kind of your typical Texas road, chip seal that, it's not smooth. So you get a lot of vibration, and to me, it puts some fatigue on my body just dealing with the vibrations. There were some stretches that the road was, not the best quality, and it was, pretty rough, which made for a rough ride. And, even if you weren't in the shoulder of the road, if you're on the main road, and there were some sections of the road that were, it was almost divoted where the tires would go. So you'd have kind of just chip seal road, and then where it divots in where the tires go from cars just going over it over and over. That was the best place to ride, was in the divoted wheel ruts, for lack of a better term.
Wow.
And that was the best place to ride. And around mile 50 was where this section of the road was, with these wheel ruts. And they had cones set up to keep you off the shoulder. So if you wanted to ride on a good part of road, you're riding in this divot area. So you have to ride single file if you want to stay there. Otherwise, you're off to the left.
Yeah.
Exactly. And, I think because a lot of people were doing that, I did see an accident, or someone who had an accident. The poor dude was laying in the middle of the road with some folks around him. And I'm guessing he hit a cone, because the cones were very close to where this divot was. But, other than a few of those different sections, and then Horseshoe Bend was a little bit of rough chip seal, and there was wind when you come around the second half of Horseshoe Bend. The wind, there was a little bit of wind there that just, by the time, you've gone 52 miles, and now there's wind blowing on you. And I started to feel it at that point. When I hit about mile 52, I was like, all right, I'm ready to be done. I had a little bit of seat discomfort, saddle discomfort, and it was, the vibrations on the road, and it was a really long ride, and I was ready to be done at that point. And I was really excited to see, when you get back on the main road that runs next to the Brazos, and you could see the bridge coming up, to the turn back into transition, caught a little bit of a second wind there. And like I said, I wanted to hit 3 hours, and I came really, really close to it, but I'm at peace that I didn't, because I did want to save my legs for the run, knowing that those hills in Cameron Park were coming up.
Right. Now, overall, did you have an idea of what kind of cadence, power, heart rate, or any kind of number you were going off of? What does this look like?
Yeah. So my coach gave me, she gave me some power goals. So I had a normalized power goal of, I think it was 125 watts. My heart rate goal was to keep it, at or under 145 as a secondary goal. I achieved that. So I think that's good. My heart rate was probably right around 145, a little bit higher than that. But close to it, close enough, better than it has been in the past. So I was able to hit those goals.
Okay. So as you're getting closer to transition, you have a few miles left here before you actually get off the bike, miles 53, 4, and 5. Are you doing anything to start preparing to start running?
Yeah. So you also mentioned cadence too. So, I didn't necessarily have a cadence goal that I recall, but I did want to keep my, legs spinning. So I did increase my cadence just to get them moving and kind of get them prepared for the run. And that was helpful.
Okay. So as you get to T2, how does T2 go for you?
It went good. Like I said, for most of the ride, I felt pretty fresh and I felt ready for the run. I was glad to be off the bike, off the saddle, but I felt ready for the run. Because we didn't have the swim, I usually don't wear socks when I bike, but I did put my socks on just to make the transition, from bike shoes to, tennis shoes faster. And, so that made it a little bit quicker for me. I did, grab another honey stinger waffle and, wolf that down as I was switching out and getting ready. And I did, knowing that I was probably going to be running for a good 3 hours, I did stop at the porta potty just to give myself a little bit of relief. So I didn't want to have to do that on the run because my leg's feeling good now. I would rather stop than after I've been running for a while and have to stop and deal with that.
Okay. So did you have a specific strategy for the run of how you wanted to accomplish a 13-mile run here?
Yeah. So my run, like I said, going in, the longest I had run was about 9 miles beforehand. So my goal was to, not have any kind of, hip issues or cramps or fatigue out, beforehand. So knowing that my overall goal was just to finish, I went in with a run walk strategy. So my goal was to run for 3 minutes, walk for 1 minute. And if I felt better, then run for more than that. So, and then of course, keeping my heart rate, trying to keep my heart rate in zone 3, or zone 2. So, I started out the run, usually between the bike and the run, my legs really feel heavy. And it takes me about 1.5 miles to 2 miles to really feel like I've recovered and I'm in good running mode. At least my body's in good running form. So the first 1.5 to 2 miles was tough as it usually is. But after that, I started feeling pretty good, but that's right when the hills are in your face there at Cameron Park. And, when I did try Waco in July as prep for Ironman Waco, I got to experience these fantastic hills and I was not looking forward to running them again and doing it twice. But I knew what to expect. And that's the whole reason why I did try Waco, was just to know what to expect. So I was glad to have that going into it.
Okay. So you want to run out of transition starting the 3-in-1 right then, or did you want to wait a little bit?
I wanted to wait a little bit. So knowing that it was going to be tough, the first 1.5 miles or so, I went ahead and walked probably first 3/4 of the mile, and then I started into it.
So you walked for about 15 minutes?
Yep.
Okay. And then you started your 3-to-1 run walk, right?
Sort of. Yeah, sort of. Because that's when the hills came. And, the grade on those hills, I think it's, higher than what they advertise it as, because it's just rough. So I ended up walking a lot, more than I had planned on the hills. But there was a lot of walking. So I ran when I started feeling like I could, when the grade kind of went down a little bit. I ran down the hills, and I ran at the flats where the aid stations were. And then, to try and make up for some of the time because my legs were still feeling good, I ended up just running by heart rate for, the flats. When you come out of Cameron Hills, you go over the bridge and then you start running down, Martin Luther King. Okay. On the side of the Brazos. So I ended up doing more running than what was expected and did not stick to the 3 minute, 1 minute.
Okay. Now, as far as nutrition goes, I know you're using honey stinger waffles and what's on course as far as bananas and things like that. Are you doing anything as far as caffeine to make sure you get caffeine in? Are you using caffeine at all?
I did not plan to. So when I run, I primarily stick to liquid nutrition or shot blocks, or if there's real food at the aid stations, I might try that too if I can stomach it. So I carry a water bottle with me with my Scratch Labs nutrition in it, and when that runs out, when it starts to run out, I dilute it with water and ice until it's gone, and then I just go to water. I do have the shot blocks, and up until this race, I haven't used salt. Really? And in Waco, I think that was part of the problem, why I struggled with it so much, why my heart rate was so high, why it was just, I think I had mild heat exhaustion, and I did not use salt. And Melissa told me to use salt, and I thought that was a dumb idea and didn't tell her that, so sorry, Melissa. But I looking back on it, I think that was a mistake. So when I was wandering around Ironman Village on Friday, I saw the base salt folks and started talking with them. So I did get some base salt, got a couple vials to go with my little salt thing. And I did carry salt with me on the bike in the run. I only used it a couple times on the bike because I kept forgetting about it, but I did remember it on the run, and I think it made a difference. I really do. So I would periodically just at like every other aid station think about it and decide if I needed to take a little lick of salt or if I was doing okay. So I did do that, and I actually loaned salt out to some other people who were struggling on the course too. Okay. So it came in handy. Good.
So whenever you actually start thinking of your body itself on the later portion of miles 8, 9, 10, how are you feeling at this point?
Better than I thought. So when I was run walking through the hills, and I hit I think it was around mile 8.5 or 9, because it kind of winds around. I heard somebody say, "Oh, we've only got a 5K to go." And I thought, "Oh, we must be getting, close to the next mile marker." And I came around and it was mile marker 10. And I thought, I guess that's true. There is only a 5K. I felt pretty good, even dealing with the hills. And I think it was because I did take my time and I did walk them. For the most part, I think if I tried to do the 3 minute, 1 minute on those hills, I don't think I would have felt as strong. I don't know for sure, but that's what I think.
That's your story.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Darn it. So I hit mile 10. We're back pretty much on the flat after that. And, I got to mile 11, and mile 11 was really where it hit me. Holy crap. I've really come a long way, and I think I'm going to make it through and not die. That mile 11 marker was really kind of my holy cow, I can do this. And I was so excited and I was so pumped. And I still felt good. My legs were sore. They were getting sore, but they weren't cramping or anything.
Nothing bad.
No. Yeah. I felt great. So, and while the bike was a food fest, the run was kind of a food fest too. I was, cutting through bee swarms to get some bananas and have an orange, and I'll have some pretzels. Sure. So I know that I've neglected nutrition. So I do think that what I ate on the run, staying hydrated, using the salts, really made a difference in how I performed, even with those beasts of a hills. So that was a really, really, good learning experience for me.
Wow.
You need to fuel.
Right.
Hello.
So as you're approaching miles 11, 12, and 13, you're nearing the end of the actual run here. What's your emotions feeling at this point in the race?
I was pretty excited. Like I said, hitting mile 11 going, I can't believe I've done this. And I hadn't finished yet, but I still felt a sense of tremendous accomplishment, knowing that 9 miles is the furthest I had run, probably in a good 6 or 7 years. So, after doing it for, after a 56-mile bike, I felt pretty amazing. I was really proud of myself. I just was really happy and I felt really good. When I hit mile, I guess about 11 and a half or 12, I came up on, one of my teammates who was really struggling. So I ended up, even though I felt really strong and I think I could have just run the whole rest of the way, I didn't want to leave her behind. So we ran together for the rest of the race and we came across the finish line together.
Nice. Who was it?
Melissa Cody.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
I was,
go ahead.
I was just going to say it was a really fun experience to be able to share that with somebody that I've been training with. Because I have been, before this, I've been training on my own for the most part, never been part of a team or a club. So it was a really kind of a special moment to share that with her.
Wow. So as you're nearing the bridge here, the finish line is actually at the one end of a bridge and you run across the entire bridge, this wood planked bridge. What is this like emotionally for you to getting to the bridge and you realize, wow, I'm almost done. And then you get to the finish line. What is this like?
Yeah. So Waco, because I did the Olympic in Waco, coming across that bridge, I don't even remember it. I was so exhausted and all I wanted to do was get across the finish line and just lay in the grass. I don't remember crossing the finish line at Waco. So it was exciting to be there. You see the red carpet up ahead. Half the bridge is still just the uncovered planks and then they have the carpet for the other half. The crowds that are there. And Melissa and I talked, we were definitely going to run the entire length of the bridge and run in and be sure we had our smiles on at the end. And it was just, it was amazing. It was a great feeling to know that all of the training that we put in, following the workout schedules, doing the things that you did when you didn't want to do it, it was all worthwhile and it all made a difference. And the sense of accomplishment and the sense of pride in finishing what you started and knowing that you can do something that so few people in the world are willing to do or even want to do. It was fantastic. Wow.
So after you crossed the finish line, what'd you do next?
I gave my husband a kiss. He put my finisher medal on me and, he went back to handing out water bottles and, medals to everybody else. And I went over to the food tent, continued my snack fest and, I had some pizza, found some other teammates and we sat there and just talked about our experience. And, then we after that, we just went our own ways and I went to the Normatec booth and put those boots on for a while.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what's something that you learned about this race experience that you'd like to pass on to someone who hasn't done this race before?
This race in particular, I would say, prepare for the hills in Cameron Park. If you're not doing hill repeats, if you're not training on hills, you really need to, if you want to run them and run them well. If you want to just walk them, you probably don't need to put a whole lot of training into it. But if you want to run them, you definitely need to practice on hills. I would say that's number one is prepare for the hills. Number two, specifically for Waco, I think if you haven't done a race in Texas, just be, aware of the roads, that the quality isn't always as smooth as it could be. And it could put some stress and some strain on your body. And you may have to, accommodate for, for having to ride single file and not be able to pass unless you want to get into some bumpy roads. And then, thirdly, I think I would say, to prepare for it, I think it would be, for any race, really, just make sure that you've got your nutrition pretty dialed in. Weather in Texas is unpredictable. It could be hot. It could be cold. So making sure that you've got your nutrition plan for both scenarios, and take advantage of the wonderful folks at the aid stations, and watch out for bees.
Bees?
Oh, the bees at the aid stations were nuts.
You didn't even mention it.
There were swarms of bees at the aid stations, and I have to give great props to every volunteer on the run, dealing with those bees. I guess it was the Coke or the fruit that they were attracted to, but they were everywhere. It was nuts. They were getting stung and everything.
Really?
Yeah. Watch out for bees.
Wow. I haven't heard anybody else even comment about that.
Yeah, so we're concerned about the disappearance of bees. They are all in Cameron Park waiting for your Coke and for your bananas and your oranges. Wow.
So as far as the race goes, we covered quite a bit. Do you have anything else you want to add?
One thing I really liked about Waco's venue, or Waco as a venue, is it's right in the heart of so much stuff. It's a great location for friends and family to come and watch. There's lots of good spots for spectators to watch you on for every part of the course right there. And there's a lot of stuff for them to do. There's a lot of restaurants. There's a lot of entertainment as far as things to do. The Dr. Pepper Museum is right downtown. You've got the Magnolia Silos. You can go high five Chip and JoJo and go redo your home or plan on it. The Mammoth Museum isn't too far. There's a lot of things to do for families, either before or even things to do during the race if they decide to wait, get something to eat, stay cool.
Nice.
And the hotels, there's a bunch of hotels right along University for folks to stay if you want to stay close. I think it's a great town to have an Ironman or a half Ironman in for convenience, both for athletes as well as for a family.
Cool. So what's next for you?
Okay. So I have Best of the Best triathlon on Sunday. I don't know what I was thinking when I signed up for that, but I thought it would be fun. And then as far as longer distances go, I've signed up for Campeche 70.3
really
in Mexico in March. And because lots of people are going and it just sounds like fun, I've also signed up for...
A lot of people are going? What do you mean?
Well, they're also going... They're going to... I'm going to Campeche, but a lot of people are going to Ironman 70.3 Texas, down in Galveston, and I've also signed up for that. It's 3 weeks after Campeche, so... Wow. I'm a glutton for punishment.
So when will you be doing your full?
If I do a full, it'll be in 2020.
Okay.
And I'm thinking about it.
Nice. So how can athletes follow you?
Ooh, how can you follow me? I need to up my social media game, but I'm definitely going to start adding more posts on my Instagram, Valerie 69377. I'm on Facebook. I do have a Tumblr account. I am Athena. And I probably need to tweet some too. It's Valerie 69377.
So what is this Tumblr thing you speak of? I haven't really got much into it. I heard it's like a Pinterest, just different.
Yeah, it's kind of like a blog site, kind of more of like a Pinteresty, Instagrammy type of blog site. My son had one, and I got an account because I was creeping on his to make sure that he wasn't doing anything bad. But I like the format for it for a blog, so I just created one there.
Okay. Well, I only have one more question for you, Valerie, and that's, what's your definition of a perfect race?
Oh, a perfect race. My definition of a perfect race would be a race where you are well prepared, you enjoy at least 80% of it, and you finish with a smile on your face.
Wow. That's pretty awesome.
Thanks.
Well, Valerie, it's been great hearing from you, learning more about you, and hearing about your experience at the inaugural 70.3 in Waco. I've enjoyed it. And I look forward to following you, and I'd love to have you back on next year at Campeche, if you'd be up for it.
Yeah, I'll be glad to. Sure thing.
Yeah, well, you have a good day, and we'll talk soon, okay?
Thanks, Terry.
Hey, you're welcome. Thanks for tuning in today. I hope you were able to learn something from today's episode. If you enjoy the show, please take a minute to leave a review on iTunes or share it with a friend. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you'd like to see pictures from this athlete's race, learn more about who I am, what I'm doing, or be on the show yourself to share your story, check out my website at CoachTerryWilson.com. Until next time, continue the pursuit.